Let's see. This is B321, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
You make me laugh.
I'm like so confused in all my classes.
No, I have to ask my team, my other group members, like, okay, is this the class we're supposed to pray?
Oh, I know.
We've just started doing it across the board. Like, okay, let's just pray.
Yeah. Yep. Just to make sure. Let's see. Oh, Matt's like trying to come in.
He'll have to click the link. Did he not? I sent the link in email as well as posted it on the discussion board. Since Tyler wasn't able to do it.
Let me just email him right now and tell him.
So Sean, where do you live? You said Nevada?
No, that's where I'm originally from.
Uh-huh.
But I live right now in Rexburg.
Okay. So are you attending BYU on campus as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Matt.
Hey, what's going on?
How's work working out?
It's good. I was able to get it worked out so I can come to these meetings.
Yay.
You talked to your boss?
Yeah.
That's good. Congrats.
Thanks.
No, sit.
Christy is just bringing up the questions. Tyler is the lead, but he's running a little late. So she's just going to bring up the questions so that we can get started. Just to give him some time and work with everyone else's schedules.
No, I'm going to finish my breakfast.
What are you having?
Captain Crunch.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
Jealous.
Dang. Okay. Okay, so we need to say a prayer. We can start with that. Any volunteers? I could say it.
I was like, I could say it if no one else.
Okay, go ahead, Crystal. And then
okay.
Closing if I need to.
Heavenly Father, thank thee so very much for blessing us to wake up this morning. We ask thee to be with us and bless us with thy spirit that we might learn from each other, listen to each other, support each other, and just uplift each other as a group. We ask thee to bless us with the knowledge that we need to progress in life, and bless us to be able to apply these lessons from the case studies into our lives to just enrich or enhance and just do better. We ask you just to be with us all and bless us all, protect us, and we're so very thankful. And we love thee in the name of thy son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, so just make sure Tyler, okay, so he hasn't responded yet, so. Okay, so brief synopsis of the case. The case describes the dilemma of a marketing manager, Thomas Green, who, after being rapidly promoted to a new position, is harshly criticized by his boss. Oh, I remember now. Okay. Green and his boss disagree on work styles and market projections. Green believes the sales goals set by his boss are based on creative accounting and grossly overstated the current market environment. A mood of silent conflict develops quickly between Green and his boss, and Green is concerned about his boss, that his boss is building a case to fire him. Green's situation is one in which his failure to adapt his work style and fully understand the demands and boundaries of his new position may lead to discharge. Tyler, are you there?
Yeah, I'm so sorry I'm so late.
It's okay. I just read the synopsis of the case. We were just kind of starting, so take it away.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I appreciate you guys getting everything ready for me. Assuming you already took care of the prayer and all that jazz.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we recording?
Let me just go ahead.
Yes, I did start the recording. It started actually maybe like 5 minutes ago.
Okay, perfect.
Cool. Sorry, it's been a crazy morning for me. I apologize. I feel so bad.
Okay.
We'll have those.
I was like, yeah, things are probably going to get pretty crazy for me here in the next couple of weeks. So.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you read the synopsis you said?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So the discussion question: what key issues in this case? In the case, I think the. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So I mean, I think the big key issues in the case that are apparent is that there's a lot of he said, she said, micromanaging of each other and trying to go after the other person. If you realize in the case, the more that I read it, the more I realized that the managers really are just clashing on the basis of things that they agree on in certain areas. But they really are just both power hungry and power driven, and that's what's causing the issues.
Well, and I also, to go along with that, I think that a lot of this could have been avoided, but they do not know each other. So you have McDonald, I believe that's her last. Is that her last name, or is that the last case study?
Yeah, that's her last name.
Okay. So you have McDonald, who she meets Green, and they're talking, and she decides that she wants to hire Green, but she did that without talking to the manager that would be directly over Green. And I just think that anytime you're hiring, it shouldn't just be a one-person decision. At least if it is, you should at least get the opinions and maybe have a round table of, I don't know, a discussion with the other managers. And maybe if they would have been able to bring Green in to have, like, you know, more than one person hiring him and more than one interview, then they would have been like, okay, we see why you like this guy. And then they would have got to share their expectations with him and kind of get to know him more. So it was just like he was thrown into a situation and he didn't know anyone except for McDonald, nor did he try to go and meet with Frank Davis to introduce himself. He went directly into working versus, hey, let me try to get to know the people that I will be working with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you touched on something that I really thought about a lot, was that there's just there's a lot of lack of clarity when it comes to expectations. I think especially between Green and Davis. Davis has, you know, kind of like, I don't know your name, but you talked first. Tyler, yes, there we go. I was able to hover your name. Like you mentioned, like a lot of micromanaging, and I think part of that as well is that he has very specific expectations, but that are also kind of unclear. I mean, a lot of it's kind of also just made up on spot. It seems like just for him to micromanage. But I think if there was a more clarity between expectations from what Davis expects of Green and what McDonald expects from both of them, I think there would be less conflict there.
Right.
Definitely. Does anybody want to add to that? I think we covered basically all the problems.
Yeah, the only other thing I had was that Davis should have taken more of a mentoring side toward Thomas, so that he was taught everything. And like you guys had said, like it was unclear. He didn't know. So I think if Davis would have just swallowed his pride and helped Thomas, he could have molded him to what he wanted him to be instead.
Yeah,
I think too.
Very well spoken.
I think too. Thinking about so the other case study we read was talking about some things to build relationships with, and One thing that I really took away from it is the section that talked about, we already talked about mutual expectations, but mutual trust. And then there was one other one, I can't remember what it was, but mutual trust, I think, is missing in this as well, because like Green has a pretty good handle on things, but then so does Davis. And I feel like Davis can't, for some reason, just doesn't trust that Green has any good judgment at all. And so, you've just got this mix with, Davis is like, well, we should be doing this. And Green's like, well, actually, hey, you hired me to make this decision, and I think we should do this. And it's like, it just goes back to what you guys were talking about with how McDonald didn't involve anybody else in the hiring process. So,
yeah, the feedback, everyone, on that one. I think we hit a lot of good points there. If you were Shannon McDonald, would you have hired Thomas Green? Why or why not?
I think I would have hired him, but he needed to have more training and more background. So I think that was a big issue, is just that he's obviously going to be really good in this position, but he just needed to know his expectations and what was important. So I think, like, in that aspect, she dropped the ball and didn't let him know exactly the marketing things that he's going to have to do and the PowerPoint presentations and like all that kind of stuff that he was lacking. She just didn't let him know what the full job was going to entail.
Yeah, I agree. I would have hired him, but I would have, like I said, I would have at least, spoke with Frank Davis to let him know, like, hey, I'm hiring. This is the candidate I'm looking at. Do you have anything that you want to go over or anything that you're specifically looking for? And then them together, after identifying their expectations. So McDonald and Davis should have got together to identify their expectations of what they needed in the candidate before hiring. And then that would have gave her a better plan to put something together, a training program or mentoring. They could have had that from the very beginning. So with communication.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that was the big part of the issues themselves. McDonald, she just went out and just hired him, even though she had the other manager that she could have brought in on the subject and interviewed Green and talked to him, got to know him a little bit better, and explained the situation on why she felt he was the best candidate for the position itself. I think that was a really important process that was kind of left out. But I would personally, I think, hire him from all the information I have, because I think he has a good idea. I think he has a good mindset, although I don't fully understand the mindset or the other candidate that was originally selected before him.
Yeah, true. And that's the one that Davis wanted, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they didn't really give a lot of background, right, on that candidates. Yeah.
For sure. Does somebody else want to add? We feel like we can move on. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on then. Describe Frank Davis. What does he value? What is his end goal he's after? Like, what's he going after? What do you guys know of Frank Davis?
I think Frank is just, he comes off as being a manager that has been there for a long time in his position, and he's kind of figured out a way of doing things and probably has already had a lot of success. And so he's not really interested in changing much of his ways or his approaches to the work or whatever he's doing. Doesn't seem like he's changing much of that, to the point where he's not allowing Green the freedoms of, trying to be good at his job. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a big part of it. I think that Frank has a set goal, a set desire, and he has that in mind. And when anybody tries to go off that course, he doesn't like it because he wants them to go the direction that he wants. And I think that's what Thomas Green was kind of doing, was going off the course to go to what he thought was a better outcome. Whereas Frank Davis kind of has that set goal in mind. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect sense. Yeah.
He kind of reminds me of, I don't remember the exact examples in the book, but instances where there were people who were so concerned about things being done exactly right, to the point where they became overly concerned about the process that other people did rather than just, helping them and supporting them in achieving their results.
Yeah, he's definitely a micromanager.
Yeah.
Yes, sure. It's like, what's the guy in the last case study? I mean, he ended up changing after his health declined, like due to stress. But he reminds me of him in the beginning when he's just so focused on one thing and that he doesn't think that there's different roads to get there. And he's just not into letting people grow. Because I also think that you have to let your employees grow. Like you have to let them test things and see what works, because you never know if there's a better idea than what you have. But he's just not open to anything like that. Mm-hmm. As I think you touched on it, Matt, earlier.
You could almost say like he's, and maybe I'm overanalyzing this, like he's almost more insecure about his own self. I mean, it's kind of written in 7 Habits, like he's insecure with himself to where he has to, I'm losing my thought a little bit here, but point is like that he has to kind of prove himself in these ways, and the only way he can do that is by being in control of and making his results, the results of his work, perfect.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, sorry, go ahead, Kristen.
No, I get what you're saying. That's exactly what it came off to me with too, and that he's looking for ways for Thomas and maybe his other employees, I don't know, to slip up and make an ish, sorry, I got a phone call.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to trust with him. I think that he is so experienced that he doesn't trust anyone else to, make the right decisions. It's like, hey, take a step back. Sometimes as a manager, you have to take a step back and let others kind of lead sometimes so that they can grow.
This case actually reminded me a lot of what our reading last week about psychological safety and how and social norms, and just how there's a lot of, and possibly even when Davis was, in his position, just some very bad norms probably gotten established to the point where it's very hard for them to feel safe, to feel that psychological safety in that environment. Maybe there's some previous norms that have been established as well there. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think we've already talked about Thomas Green a lot, but the next question is, describe Thomas Green. What does he value? What are his goals?
So Thomas Green is smart, but he's also very arrogant. And so on the part where Davis, kept sending emails asking him for stuff and he wasn't even reading some of the stuff. I just felt like he just came in it focused on climbing the ladder. And he was just, I don't know, to me, he was all about the job and just climbing the ladder, making himself look good is what I saw or what I read. Instead of thinking of it as us, a team.
Yeah.
And I think, so anyway.
No, definitely. I agree 100% with that. I think there were many times where, Frank Davis had set expectations for him, and it didn't seem like Thomas cared. And really, I know with all the jobs I've had in the past, I think you have to have your manager has those set expectations that you need to meet, and you need to really do those. And it didn't seem like Thomas really cared.
Yep. Yeah. He didn't value John's opinions or anything either, or even talk to him about why he didn't want to do things, that John had in place. He just kind of said, no, I'm not doing that. But he didn't say that, but it's like, I don't know. It wasn't.
Yeah. It was kind of implied.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I understand that completely. It kind of made me think, though, that when McDonald, when she originally hired him, she told him that Frank Davis wanted another candidate, and he might receive backlash for that. I kind of wonder if he kind of put too many defenses up because of that reasoning.
Oh, probably.
That's what I wrote in my write-up, is that it seemed like he had this attitude of, you're out to get me. So no matter what Frank Davis did or said or tried to do, Thomas, what is it? The paradigm that Thomas already had was a negative one based off of a comment that McDonald made. So he went into it with the wrong idea.
Exactly.
I never thought about that. I never thought about that. Yeah, but I agree. I like that point though.
Yeah, for sure.
She did really actually tell him that, didn't he? Like, didn't she? Like, with kind of giving Green a preconceived notion or a biased opinion of Davis going into the job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think though, I think he could have turned that around and be like, oh, if this person's if this person really is out to get me, let me give them a reason not to be, or let me establish a stronger relationship with this person. Like talking about that emotional bank account instead of continue making these withdrawals that he's already in the negative here. He's still taking out withdrawals with him. He could be putting things in, trying to not suck up to him, but really just going out of his way to establish a good relationship where that they can build up that trust.
I think that would be a trait of a good team player.
Yeah,
that would try to get in with the team and really try to get the boss to like him and get the team to like him so they can work together good. But
yeah,
Green is definitely not a team player. You when you're reading in there, he's like, yeah, I've been out doing a bunch of crap and getting things done and making things happen and blah, blah, blah. And it just sounds like he's not even, it's like trying to pull this one man show kind of thing.
Yeah. Did you get the point of that? He was kind of like, I'm going to do what I want, how I want, I know best.
Yeah.
It so shows his immaturity,
Yeah, for sure. And that kind of goes into the next question itself. It was just asking how it says, how do the actions of Thomas Green differ from the expectations of Frank Davis? I think we really have covered this in what we've been discussing about Thomas Green himself. But does anybody think they have anything else to add to that? No? Okay. How is mostly at fault? What does this question mean? Who is mostly at fault for the state of the current situation?
McDonald.
I think.
Yeah, she could have been. I agree, Matt. She could have been a leader and totally made this a better situation from the very, very beginning. You just have to set expectations and the environment of your workplace. So it's all up to the leader.
The way this really should have gone down, as far as, Frank Davis's team needing another person, what McDonald should have done is what my thoughts are is like McDonald should have just went to Frank and said, or Frank should have come to McDonald and said, "Hey, I need another person on my team. I'm going to find somebody that's going to work well with our team, and then you just need to approve him or her." And
Yeah, that would have made
just
sense.
sat in on the interviews and just gave her opinion and made sure that she's going to work with the company in a corporate overall way. But the nuts and bolts actually reasons for hiring him should have been with the team, and even more of the team members should have been involved. It's totally, she just kind of was like, I know more about your team than you do.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Here's
hire
this person for your team.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think
What actions?
all of them
Sorry.
honestly, I think all of them are at fault. Like McDonald shouldn't have hired him without talking to Davis. Davis needs to step up and be a better teacher and leader, and then Thomas needs to grow up and learn how to work as a team. So I think all three of them have their faults where all of it together just didn't work at all.
Right.
Yeah, it takes whenever you're with a group. I mean, yes, it's the leader to establish the environment of the workplace, and to make sure that everyone is on board in the hiring process. But ultimately, you all have a part in the type of work you do, the relationships you build. It's like us, if one of us come prepared and the rest of us, we just show up, then we're not individually doing our part. So one person can't do everything. We all need to help out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if you were Thomas Green, what actions would you take? That's a really tough question.
Yeah. I don't think I don't.
I wrote a lot, so I'm like, you probably
How many pages?
Go over everything.
How many pages was your write-up, Crystal?
Let me see while you guys are.
Mine was only almost 2.
Mine was 3.
Okay, mine was like 2.5 or 1.5.
I think I just
did 1.75.
I would start with so if I was in a situation, I would just start with trying to understand myself and the actions I played in this situation, that's what he was doing at the end of the case study. But then the next step I would take is you have to apologize, regardless if you believe it was your fault or not. I think it's just best to apologize, come up with a plan of how you can work with others. So I think I put that hey, he needs to come up with a plan, email it to them, maybe even ask them to schedule a meeting so that he can show that. Because I think Frank was just you don't put anything on your calendar. So you could just start by showing hey, I can do this stuff, and just getting the feedback and mentorship from both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of. I put in my write-up how I thought the steps to take to help fix the situation is kind of like what you said. Start with just trying to break it down with what each side of the problem, what their concerns are, and I thought of just kind of bringing both of them into a meeting with McDonald and maybe a member of HR and saying, look, we should have done this differently. We should have consulted more people. Davis, you should have been involved. And everybody apologize, and then kind of pull a clean slate and look, okay, now that we're gonna need a clean slate. Davis, you need to, why don't you set some, we need some commitments from you for what you can do differently and how you can work better with Green. Green, same thing for you. McDonald maybe has some commitments on, following up with them, and just kind of starting over in a way to try to refresh it and give it another try and see if they can't work it out. Almost go to marriage counseling, basically.
So when I did my write-up, I mostly referenced the other article that we read, and I mostly was talking about how really really what he should have done from the start was establish a stronger relationship with McDonald. And we talked about this before. I think that's kind of like what it implied near the end, though, is how he was going to establish a better relationship with McDonald as well. Ultimately, like as a mediator between him and Davis, but I guess leading up to that point, what you just mentioned. But
I agree, Sean. I think I put that as well, because I think that if he would have went to McDonald, maybe he could have won McDonald over, kind of like what I think Matt mentioned earlier. And with doing that, he could have even asked McDonald for like advice, like, hey, you were in this position before. What worked for you and what would you change? Like, just, asking for his input.
Definitely. And that kind of goes into the next question, which is how does power and office politics come into play? Do you feel like that makes me think, do you feel like McDonald used too much for power to go ahead and just hire Thomas right off the bat? Or do you think that maybe Frank Davis used too much power on, hey, you need to do this and that? What do you guys think?
Both.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Davis definitely used his power and kind of came down as this authoritative person. You need to do it my way or else. And it didn't work, with Thomas. But again, I mean, all of this goes back to they had no relationship. So I think like that plays such a huge thing in office politics and making sure that power is not taken advantage of like Davis was trying to do.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it was abused on all sides. Even with Thomas, he used his opportunity to leave I think Orlando that one time and fly to Atlanta because he thought it would be better use of time or something, time management. I think that all around that he needed to be more cautious about how he used his travel time and how he managed his work ethic. Yeah. I think that could go into play for him. So I think all three of them kind of used a lot of power. But in general, just with any kind of office situation, how do you think that power can influence a job?
Can make it miserable.
Yeah. Have you ever had a manager that has had a lot of power or influence and they kind of use that to the best of their ability or the worst of their abilities?
I have, when I worked at the district attorney's office. I think I've told you guys about this, but she did. She actually got demoted, but she would just come in, and because she was the manager, she overloaded us with work files, with like different cases. When we were going to court and stuff, we had to do so much legwork, and she would literally sit there and order clothes online and look at, like, seriously, which is why she got in trouble. But she used her power because even when we tried to talk to her or ask questions, she would make us feel like we were dumb. Like if we like tried to like clarify stuff, it was as if like, oh, well, you don't understand that. I can't believe you don't understand. So I think it just tore each individual apart. Like the work environment was so negative. We did not feel confident in ourselves. And yeah, she just kept going to the point where we would just go in and it was miserable at work.
Yeah, it definitely can be a good or a bad thing depending on the person and depending on if they let it go to their head, really. I think that's basically what you touched on is what some of us have experienced, and some of us have experienced people using their power for good as well. But I honestly don't have a lot of good examples for that, so I'm not one of those persons to say. Does anybody have anything to add to that? No? Okay. What are each of their conflict styles? as in each of the characters in this example or story? What are their conflict styles? I don't really understand this question. I'm not gonna lie.
I know. I was like, what does that mean?
I think Davis is passive aggressive. He doesn't even want to. Well, I guess he's tried to talk to Green, but he's just sending these little emails over to McDonald like a little like snake in the grass. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he totally does.
and as a manager, I think it's okay to be confrontational every once in a while. Like, look, hey, your email has a calendar for a reason. Start using your events calendar for events, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not the only one with us working on our team. And like, I don't know. You don't have to be a jerk about it, but sending emails to McDonald, just talking like ranting or venting to her, it's like, I don't know. Don't think it did much good.
Yeah. I think like also with Davis, and I don't even know if this goes along with the same thing, but I think it does. Davis should have talked to him like exactly when all the issues happened instead of telling him later, and then like in a 2-hour meeting, like explaining everything that went wrong. So I think that was a big issue with him as well. With Davis.
For sure. I agree. I don't really have anything to add to that. I think you guys covered a lot of that. But what do you guys think he should do now? Like, do you think he can salvage the situation at all? What would you guys do from here? Do you think? Because I know Thomas is worried that he's going to lose his job and have all these issues with his mortgage and all that. There's a lot of stress on him now with this. How do you think he could repair the situation?
Well, I think, really, first of all, taking responsibility for everything, even though some of it's not really his fault, he should still take responsibility for it. And like we've talked about before, look for ways to rebuild those relationships. Someone mentioned earlier about apologizing. I think really just doing everything we've talked about and but I would say ultimately for him in his situation, he needs to take responsibility for everything.
Yeah, and I think he needs to tell them how he's going to be a better team player in the future and what he's going to do to be what he's going to do to better his situation with his leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can all be done. It can all be smoothed over for sure.
For sure.
Take a little.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just saying, like, if all of them change just a tiny bit, a few things, this whole thing would work out perfectly.
For sure. And if I was a manager and I had an employee that came to me and said, hey, I'm sorry for how this has been going. I'm sorry for what I've been doing, but I really want to better the situation. I want to do this and this and this. And I'm sorry for the past. I would really start a clean slate with that person. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what would happen here in this case too.
And maybe one thing before he goes into the situation is recognize that he may not, that even though he may go in and he may be honest and sincere about all of it, that Davis may not receive him well. He may, recognizing that, and whatever is said from that conversation, that he take it seriously and that he move forward with it, because at whatever level, because he could come and apologize and say all these things, and then it could just turn sour again, because Davis might say something, and then he might just turn that around and make it even worse.
Yeah, definitely. Does somebody have anything to add to that? No? All right, well, let's go ahead and talk about applying these things. How can managing up be applied at work? What are the principles of power within an organizational structure? I really think we've talked about these in what we've discussed so far. I think we've talked about what they can do that we can do personally to apply these things in our daily work, and we've talked about what others can do to apply these in their office. So we'll just go ahead, because I'm reading these, and really we've talked about each and every single one of these. So we'll just go on and move to the next one. The last, well, not the last, but the last part here, it says what gospel connections are pertinent. What do you guys think?
So here's one that I can think of is, there's a hierarchy. Well, there is a hierarchy in the church. And sometimes, we can either be very full of ourselves and try to get things done our way, or we can do it the way it's being done. We can be humble about it, and listen to what other people have to say and what other people are doing. I think it's very pertinent to the gospel.
Yeah, another thing going along with what Sean just said is when I think about the church, and one of the many things I love about the church is that there isn't one person making a decision. If you really think about how everything is done in the church, even the prophet, he prays to our Heavenly Father to receive the revelation to make sure something is right. Once he prays and receives the counsel or revelation he feels like he needs, he goes to and he has counselors, and then we have the quorum of the 12, and then we have the 70, and they all communicate with one another. And even after all of them communicate, we still sustain the decisions, like we sustain them. So it seems like it's all a network of everyone working together and influencing each other. So I guess what can pertain is just making sure that you are talking to others, getting others' opinions, and you're not just going and doing stuff by yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think there are any connections between the case and this week's reading assignment?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I actually put that in there. I don't remember if I did or not, but did I? No, I didn't. But I had this thought while you were talking, Crystal, at least regarding the connection there is, in many ways, the decisions here are being made, for one person's gain. And there's a lot of competition, you could say, between the two, where they're in a situation that they all can benefit. If green succeeds, then really don't they all succeed? Don't they all succeed in that one moment? So I think if they were to really go for that win-win and looking for like it talks about in the book, like unanimous decision making. And then I think that a lot of these different things could be resolved in that way. I think that's kind of the correlation there. And actually, the thought was along the lines of quorum of the 12 apostles. They have to make a unanimous decision regarding changes in the gospel, or changes in policy, and also in agreeing on doctrine. It's all unanimous. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like that. Thanks for that. Is there anyone else that noticed any other connections? No? Well, so the end conclusion of what happened to Thomas Green, I'm just gonna read it to you guys. So after McDonald's February 5th, 2008 email, Green took the offensive against his boss. He crafted a series of memorandums, emails, reports, and projections that exposed inaccuracies in creative forecasting. This data enabled Green to build some alliances with other marketing personnel who used the data to ultimately side with him. On April 4th, it was announced that Frank Davis was being moved laterally to an undefined special project. However, Green's tactics were seen as overly brutal by many in the company, and although he won the battle against his boss, his career was irreparably harmed. McDonald distanced herself from him. By July 2008, Green announced he was resigning from his position and pursue a full-time studies for an MBA. We can only speculate what would have occurred if Green had tried to help Davis work out the discrepancies in the problem forecast. Perhaps both would have succeeded. You know, it's really sad that.
That's sad. I'm like depressed now.
That's
No.
that. You know, that really reminds me of a lot of what was just actually read about, like, you know, because of what is it, being loyal to those who aren't present, like because of the way they would talk about other people, like they would lose trust, and the way he acted with Green, and you know, it lost trust with other people. Wow.
Yeah, it reflects really poorly for him, that's for sure. And I understand why everybody kind of distanced himself from Green afterwards.
I mean, I wouldn't trust him. Like, if you're just gonna, oh no.
Yeah,
Like,
being his boss. I mean,
yeah.
who'd they hire to take Davis's place? You know, look at the hot seat.
That's so sneaky. Like, I don't understand why he did it that way. Like, that's so wrong.
Yeah, I'm like, how do you sleep with yourself? Like how do you sleep?
Davis, you know, Davis is probably doing fine. He's probably, you know, he said they moved laterally, so he didn't get demoted or promoted.
Right. But his reputation is ruined, though.
But yeah.
Yeah.
He probably has a lot of
jacked up.
He probably had a lot of sympathy, though, from a lot of people. You know, you get sympathy emails like, "Hey, man, I really like working with you. I don't think this should have happened," you know, and so you know, he probably came out doing okay, but
shows his immaturity again. Green's immaturity.
Well, like cutthroat.
Yeah.
Now, if they were to ask me, would you hire Green? I would say no. Now, after knowing this.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know. I mean, it sounded like from what he was doing before he went into the marketing, like it didn't have any connection, and that it just seems like McDonald just seems to randomly hire him. Like he doesn't really seem to have very much background in marketing. It's like, why did you hire him? He's some other guy. It's like, I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't have hired him.
Yeah, it looks bad on McDonald too, for sure.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's a sad ending of the story. That's
Tyler, I thought you were going to tell us
happen,
that everything worked out.
Feel good story? Nope.
Well, not everything has a fairy tale ending. So really, that's all that we have. We've covered everything in this case study today. So I appreciate you guys' feedback and a willingness to talk and discuss this out more clearly. Does anybody have anything else they want to add before we go ahead and close it up?
Good.
Cool. Can somebody say a closing prayer for us?
I could do it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Our dear, kind, and gracious Heavenly Father, we thank thee so much for the opportunity for us to meet together and to learn from one another. We thank thee for the opportunity for us to gain an education as well, and to do it with faith-based learning and have the Spirit on our side. We ask thee that the Spirit will be with us for the rest of the day, and that we will be able to be proactive and get all our schoolwork, our regular work, and anything we need to do with our families. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.